The day I found my belongings in boxes stacked by the front door, I knew my toxic family had crossed the final line. My parents had thrown me out of the house just before my SATs, the most important test of my life, so that my spoiled sister Chloe could use my room as a dance studio. What they didn't know was that this act of cruelty would trigger a perfect revenge that wouldn't require an ounce of effort on my part. I would simply watch as their own decisions destroyed the future they so desperately wanted to build for their favorite daughter. My mother, Maria, didn't even have the decency to look me in the eye as she took my test prep books and carelessly threw them into a cardboard box. Your sister needs this space to prepare for her national auditions, she declared in a tone that brooked no argument. Your test is just one day, but her future as a dancer depends on this. Behind her, Chloe smiled maliciously as she began placing her dance trophies on my bookshelf. I felt my blood boil and my bright future fading before my eyes. The scene was the epitome of 18 years of blatant favoritism. My father, Robert, barely looked up from his phone as he sentenced my fate. You can stay on the couch for a few days or find somewhere else to sleep. You're an adult now, Isabella. You should understand your sister has real talent. Their words cut like knives. They weren't just taking my room. They were taking my dignity, my safe space to study, and the final proof that in this family, I would always be disposable. I need a quiet place to study, I argued, my voice trembling with indignation. The SATs will determine which college I can get into. I've been preparing for months. My mother snorted as if I'd asked for something absurd. You've always been so dramatic, Isabella. Chloe has a future in classical dance. She needs space to rehearse. You just need a book and a pencil. That night, as I tried to concentrate on the uncomfortable living room couch, with the TV noise my father refused to turn down, I heard Chloe talking on the phone in my room. The thin walls didn't hide her conversation. I did it, Paige, she laughed. I convinced my parents I needed more space to develop my art. Little brainiac Isabella is sleeping on the couch. Right before her precious test, she paused to laugh. I hope she fails. She's always been the smart one, the responsible one. What good is that when my parents finally see my talent is worth more than her stupid grades? That night, I made a decision that would change our lives forever. It wouldn't be a planned revenge or an act of teenage rebellion. It would be something far more powerful, my relentless success in the face of their pettiness. While Chloe celebrated her small victory, I was already calculating the steps toward my total independence. I called my best friend Sophia in tears explaining the situation. Her family, unlike mine, understood the value of hard work and education. Come right now, Sophia said without hesitation. My mom is already preparing the guest room. In less than an hour, I had gathered my essentials and left without my parents even asking where I was going. The contrast between the two families was like moving from a desert to an oasis. While Sophia's mother, Mrs. Evans, made me tea and asked about my college plans, my own parents hadn't even noticed I was gone. This house is your house, Mr. Evans told me as he showed me his study. You can use it for as long as you need to prepare. Determined people like you build their own path. The night before the big exam, while reviewing in Mr. Evans's quiet study, I got a text from my mother. Where did you leave the scientific calculator? Chloe needs it for her math homework. Not a single question about where I was. Not a wish of good luck for my exam. Just a demand to keep facilitating my favored sister's life. I didn't reply. On test day, I arrived early, my mind clear despite the circumstances. I approached every question, every section, thinking of my future, of the independence I now craved more than ever. My parents hadn't bothered to wish me luck, but I had supportive messages from Sophia and her parents. Leaving the exam, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and freedom. I had done my best under terrible circumstances. I went back to my parents' house that afternoon to get more of my things. Knowing they'd be at one of Chloe's dance recitals, I found my room completely transformed. My bookshelves now held ballet slippers. My walls were covered with posters of dance companies, and my desk, where I'd spent countless hours studying, now served as an improvised vanity. My books were piled carelessly in a corner, some with bent pages. The toxic family that had raised me hadn't even respected my belongings. I was gathering my most important books when Chloe returned unexpectedly. "What are you doing here?" she asked disdainfully. "This isn't your room anymore." I looked at her without emotion. "I'm just getting my things. Don't worry. I don't plan on staying where I'm not welcome." Chloe smiled with superiority. "How did your little test go? Think you'll get into any decent university sleeping on a couch?" I didn't give her the satisfaction of an emotional response. Silently, I continued packing my most important belongings. Her smile faltered at my lack of reaction. "Where have you been anyway?" she asked, suddenly curious. "With people who understand what it means to support someone," I replied calmly. "Something this family has never known how to do." My parents arrived as I finished packing. My mother seemed surprised to see me. "Where have you been, Isabella? You had us worried." I looked at her in disbelief. "Worried? You haven't even called me in 3 days. You didn't know where I was sleeping or eating." "Don't be melodramatic," my father replied, using his favorite phrase to invalidate my feelings. "We knew you were fine. You've always been independent." "You're right," I said, zipping my suitcase. "I'm so independent that I no longer need to live under this roof." My mother's expression changed from irritation to alarm. "You can't just leave like this. Where will you live? With what money?" "Don't be ridiculous, Isabella." "I'll manage," I replied, picking up my belongings. "Like I always have, without your support." As I walked out the door, I heard Chloe whisper to my father, "She'll be back in a few days when the drama and money run out." They didn't know they had just set me free. They didn't know that exam they considered insignificant compared to Chloe's artistic ambitions would be my ticket to a life they could never imagine for me. And above all, they didn't know that the real revenge wouldn't require planning. It would simply arrive as a natural consequence of their own decisions. That night, back at Sophia's house, I made one of the most important decisions of my life. I would never live with my parents again. No matter how hard it got, I would find a way to stay afloat on my own. "You can stay here as long as you need," Mrs. Evans assured me when I told her my decision. "But if you want independence, we'll help you get it." Mr. Evans, who worked as a manager at a restaurant chain, offered me a part-time job as a cashier. The pay wasn't impressive, but it would allow me to save while I waited for my SAT results and applied to universities. I accepted immediately. Over the next few weeks, I established a routine. I worked in the mornings, studied in the afternoons, and sent applications to universities and scholarship programs at night. My phone occasionally rang with messages from my mother, all related to items I'd left behind that Chloe needed. Reference books, my old laptop, even clothes she could alter for her performances. Never a question about my well-being or my future. A month after I left, the SAT results arrived. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. I had scored in the 98th percentile. Emotion overwhelmed me as Sophia and her parents celebrated with me. This was the first step toward my silent revenge. Success. "This calls for a celebration," Mr. Evans exclaimed, opening a bottle of sparkling cider. "With these scores, you can apply to any university." That night, as we toasted, I received a text from my mother. "Your father and I want to talk to you. It's important." For the first time, they seemed interested in my whereabouts. I decided to meet them at a neutral coffee shop. Not their house, it was no longer my territory. The next day, I sat across from my parents at a table away from the window. My mother tried for a hug, which I subtly avoided. My father looked uncomfortable, as he always did when facing emotional situations. "We heard about your SAT score," my mother began, smiling as if she shared my achievement. "We're very proud." I stared at her. "How did you hear?" My father coughed nervously. "The letter came to the house. We opened it thinking it was for Chloe." Of course. Even in this, Chloe was the priority. "And what exactly do you want?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "We want you to come home," my mother said. reaching her hand across the table without quite touching mine. This separation has been hard on everyone. Does Chloe miss me? I asked incredulously. Or does she miss having someone to look down on to feel superior? That's not fair, Isabella, my father interjected. Your sister has her ways, but she's family. Family, I repeated the word bitterly. The same family that threw me out on the street before the most important test of my life. The same family that didn't even call to see where I was sleeping. My mother had the decency to blush. We made a mistake. We thought you were staying with a friend, and that made it acceptable. I finished for her. You didn't call because you assumed someone else would take care of me. As always. An uncomfortable silence settled between us. Finally, my father spoke. We've been thinking. With your grades, you could get into state university. It's here in the city. You could live at home and save on room and board. There it was. They didn't want me back out of concern or love. They wanted me because I now represented a valuable asset, an achievement they could mention at social gatherings. Our daughter Isabella is studying at State University. I've already applied to several universities, I replied calmly, including some out of state with full scholarships. My mother's expression changed. Out of state? But that's not necessary. You can study here near your family. The same family that evicted me for a dance recital? I asked. No, thank you. I'd rather build my future away from people who only value me when I'm useful to them. You're being unfair, my father protested. We've always supported you. When? I asked, feeling the pent-up rage finally find its voice. When you canceled my quinceañera because it coincided with Chloe's dance camp? Or when you used my college savings to pay for her private lessons? Or maybe when you threw me out of my room before the SATs? My parents exchanged uncomfortable looks. Those were difficult times, my mother murmured. We made decisions thinking about what was best for the family. No, I corrected. You made decisions thinking about what was best for Chloe. It's always been that way. I stood up, leaving my coffee almost untouched. I'm not coming back home. I found people who value me for who I am, not for what I can contribute to the family image. Where will you live? How will you support yourself? My mother asked, genuinely confused. In her mind, I was incapable of surviving without them, despite never having supported me. I already am, I replied. I have a job. I have a place to stay, and soon I'll have a scholarship. All without your help. I left the coffee shop feeling a strange relief. For the first time, I had expressed truths I had held inside for years. I didn't expect them to understand or change, but I no longer needed their approval or understanding. 2 weeks later, I received my first university acceptance letter, the University of California, Berkeley, with a full merit scholarship. I cried with joy as Sophia and her parents hugged me. This was more than I had dreamed of. The other acceptances came quickly. Stanford, MIT, Columbia, all with substantial scholarship offers. My silent revenge was taking shape in the sweetest way possible, through the success my parents never believed I could achieve, at least not without the family name to back me up. I decided to accept Berkeley. The distance was perfect, far enough to cut toxic ties, but not so far as to feel completely uprooted. Plus, its biomedical engineering program was exactly what I was looking for. When I told my parents my decision, the news landed like a bombshell. California? My mother exclaimed over the phone. That's across the country. How can you go so far? By plane, I replied dryly. And it's an incredible opportunity. A full scholarship to one of the best universities in the world. But Chloe has her important auditions next year, my mother continued, as if that were relevant. She'll need our full family support. I'm sure she will, I replied, holding back the irony. As she always has. The day before I left for Berkeley, I had an unexpected visitor. Chloe showed up at Sophia's house looking uncomfortable and out of place. Can I talk to you? She asked, avoiding my gaze. I led her to the backyard where we could speak privately. She sat on the swing, suddenly seeming much younger and more vulnerable. Are you really leaving tomorrow? She finally asked. Yes, I confirmed. My flight leaves at 10. Chloe nodded, nervously playing with a loose thread on her jacket. Mom and Dad are upset. They say you're ungrateful after all they've done for you. I couldn't help a bitter laugh. All they've done for me? You mean evicting me from my room before the most important test of my life? It was my idea, she confessed suddenly. I told them I needed more space to practice, that it was crucial for my audition. I looked at her, not entirely surprised by the confession. I know, I heard you on the phone that night. Her eyes widened in alarm. You heard me? Every word, I confirmed, including how you hoped I would fail my exam. Chloe had the decency to blush. I was stupid and immature. I've always been jealous of you. This did surprise me. Jealous? What could you possibly be jealous of? You were the favorite, the talented one, the one who got all the support. But you were the smart one, she replied in a small voice. Everything came easily to you. School, friends, decisions. I only had dance, and if I failed at that, I had nothing left. I'm not like you. I can't just excel at anything I try. I was speechless, seeing my sister for the first time without the filter of our forced rivalry. Deep down, we were both girls trapped in the roles our parents had created for us. Me, the disposable academic. Her, the artist whose value depended exclusively on her success in dance. I didn't come to apologize, Chloe continued, surprising me again. I know what I did was terrible. I just wanted you to know that I admire you for leaving, for standing on your own. I could never do that. You could, I replied. Anyone can if they really need to. Chloe shook her head. I don't have your grades or your intelligence or your determination. If I left home, what would I do? Where would I go? For the first time, I felt a pang of compassion for my sister. She was as trapped as I had been, but in a different way. Her cage was made of impossible expectations and a single purpose. If she failed as a dancer, she had no plan B. Our parents had never allowed her one. Find something you're passionate about besides dance, I suggested. Something that's just yours, not what Mom and Dad want for you. Like what? She asked, genuinely confused. I don't know, Chloe, that's the point. You have to figure it out for yourself. We sat in silence for a moment, the swing moving gently beneath us. I wish you luck at Berkeley, she said finally, standing up. Really? And I wish you luck finding yourself, I replied sincerely as I watched her leave. I thought that maybe this was a form of closure. I didn't forgive what she had done, but for the first time, I could see my sister as another victim of the toxic family system we had endured. The next day, I boarded my flight to California without looking back. My parents didn't come to see me off. They had an important commitment related to one of Chloe's performances. Their absence no longer hurt. It was simply the final confirmation that I had made the right decision. Berkeley turned out to be everything I had dreamed of and more. The vibrant campus, inspiring professors, and motivated peers created an environment where I could finally flourish without the constant shadow of comparison and favoritism. I threw myself into my studies with renewed passion, discovering a particular interest in advanced bionic prosthetics research. During my second year, I met Professor Davis, a brilliant bioengineering researcher who became my mentor. Under his guidance, I began developing an innovative project, a lightweight exoskeleton that could help people with reduced mobility regain basic functions. You have exceptional talent, Isabella, he told me one day as we reviewed the initial prototypes. This project could change lives if we can perfect it. I worked tirelessly on the project for the next 2 years, combining it with my regular studies and a job as a research assistant that provided additional income. I was no longer financially dependent on anyone, a freedom I valued above almost everything else. I kept in sporadic contact with Sophia and her parents, who had become my true family. They visited for my graduation, bringing with them a genuine pride that contrasted painfully with the absence of my biological parents. My communication with my family had dwindled to occasional messages from Chloe, who briefly updated me on her life. She had abandoned her dream of being a professional dancer after a knee injury. She had taken a break from her studies, which she never resumed, and now worked as a receptionist at a local dance studio. She never mentioned our parents, and I never asked. The big change came during my final year at Berkeley. My exoskeleton project won the prestigious National Innovation in Bioengineering Award, attracting the attention of major tech and medical companies. Before I even graduated, I had job offers from 3 leading companies in the sector. I accepted a position at Neurospan, an innovative company based in San Francisco that developed advanced medical technologies. The starting salary was impressive, especially for a recent graduate, but what really attracted me was the opportunity to continue developing my exoskeleton with virtually unlimited resources. My rise at Neurospan was meteoric. In less than 2 years, I went from junior engineer to project lead, and finally to director of the Assistive Technologies Department. At 25, I was the youngest director in the company's history, leading a team of 30 brilliant engineers and scientists. The exoskeleton, now perfected and rebranded as Neuromotion, was revolutionizing the lives of people with spinal cord injuries and degenerative diseases. We had begun clinical trials with promising results, and Neurospan's stock soared with every new advancement reported. My face began appearing in specialized magazines. The young genius behind Neuromotion, they called me. Interviews, conferences, invitations to speak at prestigious universities. My professional life was flourishing in ways I could never have imagined that night on my parents' couch, studying for the SATs through tears. It was one of these interviews that finally connected my present to my past. Medical Innovation magazine published an extensive profile on me and the development of Neuromotion, including details of my personal history, my humble origins, my struggle for higher education, my determination in the face of family adversity. I didn't explicitly mention my parents' abandonment or the favoritism toward Chloe, but I did comment that I had to find my own path without traditional family support, and that sometimes the obstacles we face at home are the hardest to overcome. 2 days after the article was published, I received a call from an unknown number. It was my father. Isabella. His voice sounded strangely humble. I read about you in that magazine. It's impressive what you've achieved. Thank you, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. 5 years of distance had healed many wounds, but some scars remained sensitive. Your mother and I were wondering if you might visit us sometime. It's been a long time. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Why now, Dad? Why after 5 years with almost no contact? There was a long silence. Things haven't been going well here, he finally admitted. Chloe, well, she's had difficulties finding her path, and we're not getting any younger. We thought maybe you could help. I finished for him. Now that I'm successful and have money. It's not that, he protested weakly, but his tone gave him away. It's just that we're proud of you. We always have been. No, Dad, I corrected calmly. You're proud of what I've achieved, not of me. There's a difference. Please, Isabella, just come visit us. Your sister needs you. And there it was, the real reason for his call. Chloe needed help, and I was the last resort. The irony was almost poetic. What's wrong with Chloe exactly? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. She's out of work again and has some debts. Nothing serious, he hurried to add. But with your position, we thought maybe you could guide her, help her find something stable. 5 years ago, this conversation would have devastated me. Now I only felt a sad clarity. My parents hadn't changed. They still saw people as resources, valuing them according to their usefulness. I'll be in town next month for a conference, I said finally. We can meet then. I didn't promise financial help or magic solutions for Chloe, just a visit, a reunion that might give us all some closure. The night before flying to my hometown, I got a message from Chloe. I know why they're having you come see them. It wasn't my idea. You don't have to help me if you don't want to. It was the most honest message I'd received from my family in years. When I finally arrived at my parents' house, the contrast with my current life was overwhelming. The house seemed smaller, more run down than I remembered. My mother had aged considerably, and my father walked with a slight limp he didn't have when I left. Chloe appeared, a shadow of the arrogant young woman who had celebrated my eviction years ago. The dark circles, the dull hair, the careless clothes, everything spoke of someone who had lost her purpose and confidence. Isabella! My mother hugged me with tears in her eyes. You look so elegant. I was wearing a simple pantsuit, the same one I'd worn for the conference that morning. It wasn't particularly luxurious, but it represented a world completely different from this house. The conversation over dinner was awkward. My parents alternated between bragging about my achievements, which they knew only from articles, and dropping hints about Chloe's temporary difficulties. Finally, my father addressed the topic directly. Your sister has talent, Isabella. She just needs an opportunity. With your contacts at those important companies. Dad, I interrupted gently, I can't just get Chloe a job. Tech companies require specific skills, education, experience. But you're a director, my mother insisted. Surely you can do something. I looked at Chloe, who was studying her plate intently, clearly mortified. What do you want, Chloe? I asked directly. What would you actually like to do? She looked up, surprised to be consulted. I don't know. I never really thought about it. It was always dance. And when that ended, you could go back to school, I suggested. There are programs for adults, online courses. For what? My father interrupted. At her age, she needs a job, not more studies. She's 26, Dad, I replied calmly. It's not too late to reinvent herself. That night, after my parents went to bed, Chloe and I stayed in the kitchen talking like we never had before. I'm sorry, she said finally, for everything, for how we treated you, for what I did. What happened after I left? I asked, genuinely curious. She sighed, running a hand through her unkempt hair. The pressure increased. Without you to compare to, all their expectations fell on me. When I injured my knee and had to give up professional ballet, it was like I'd failed my only mission in life. And college. I tried. She shrugged. But I was never a good student. I didn't have the discipline for it. After failing classes for 2 semesters, I just stopped going. I started working temp jobs. None of them lasted. I looked at her, seeing the girl who had been programmed for one thing, with no alternative plan. What would you like to do if you could choose anything? I asked. She seemed genuinely perplexed by the question. No one's ever asked me that before. She thought for a moment. I like working with kids. At the dance studio, I taught the little ones. It was the only thing I really enjoyed. For the first time in our adult lives, we had a real conversation. No competition, no resentment. Just 2 women trying to understand each other. The next day, as I prepared to return to San Francisco, I made a decision. It wasn't exactly what my parents expected, but it was what I could offer. Honestly, I've been thinking, I told them at breakfast. Neurospan has a scholarship program for continuing education. I could recommend Chloe for a training course in pediatric assistive therapy. She would work with children who use our technologies to regain mobility. Chloe's eyes lit up for the first time since my arrival. Really? You think I could do that? It requires patience, empathy, and communication skills, I replied. Based on what you told me about teaching dance to kids, I think you could be good at it. Would she have to move to San Francisco? My mother asked, clearly alarmed. Eventually, yes, the program starts online but includes in-person internships. If she completes the training successfully, she could qualify for a permanent position. My parents exchanged glances. It wasn't the immediate financial rescue they expected, but something more valuable long-term. A genuine opportunity for Chloe to find her own path. I don't know if I'm ready, Chloe murmured. No one is ready at the beginning, I replied. I wasn't ready to live alone at 18 or to lead a department at 25, but I did it day by day. You can too. As I said goodbye, my mother hugged me tightly. "We don't deserve your help," she whispered in my ear. "After how we treated you." "I'm not doing it for you," I replied honestly. "I'm doing it for Chloe, and because it's the right thing to do." My father, always less expressive, shook my hand awkwardly. "We're proud of you, Isabella. Truly." For the first time, I believed him, not because I was now successful or because I could help them, but because he could finally see me for who I really was. Strong, capable, independent. Everything I had achieved despite them, not thanks to them. "The toxic family you created damaged both of us," I said before leaving. "They threw me out, but they locked Chloe in a cage of impossible expectations. Neither of us deserved that." As I boarded my flight back to San Francisco, I reflected on the strange path I had traveled. That night when I found my belongings in boxes by the door, I felt my world collapsing. I never imagined that moment of rejection would be the catalyst for my best revenge. A successful, independent life, finally free from the cycle of constant manipulation and comparison. Chloe eventually completed the training program and moved to San Francisco, where she began working in Neurospan's pediatric therapy department. Our bond, once defined by forced competition, gradually transformed into an adult relationship based on mutual respect. My parents never completely changed. They still saw the world through the lens of status and utility, but something subtle had shifted in our dynamic. They no longer had power over me. My achievements didn't seek their approval, and my self-esteem didn't depend on their validation. The true revenge wasn't confronting them with their injustice or making them pay for the damage caused. It was building a life so full and satisfying that their approval became irrelevant. It was breaking the cycle of emotional dependency that had kept me tied to their expectations and judgments. Sometimes when I look out my office window at the San Francisco skyline, I think of that young girl crying on a couch, trying to focus on a test while her world fell apart. I would tell her that moment, though painful, was the first step toward her freedom. That the toxic family that rejected her had inadvertently given her wings. That sometimes being pushed out of the nest is exactly what we need to learn how to fly. Some stories aren't just stories, they are mirrors of life. If this one moved you, help us continue telling others that also deserve to be heard. Hype this video so more people can see it. Thank you very much and have an excellent day.